Hello, this is the Grand Duke Dmitri 1917 diary series on YouTube, and thank you and welcome to the new subscriber. There have been several recently, and that, of course, just absolutely delights me, and I hope you're enjoying everything. We are up to the final section of the long diary entry of the 29th of October 1917, and that is Old Style, which means the Julian calendar. So it was November on the Western Gregorian calendar. Our recap, so this diary entry has been divided by me into 6 sections, and 5 of those 6 sections are about what was going on as far as current events, the Bolshevik Revolution, a few other things like the Italian disaster, the Battle of Caporetto, I think it was, which was just a rout for the Italians, and that was what Dmitri was talking about in the last diary section, and specifically also linking it to what had happened in Russia, and the fact that the Allies were now going to have to divert manpower, troops, to Italy. Anyway, we talked about that yesterday, and then also talking about what he himself was in the midst of. Not that he was having any trouble getting food, but the Persian famine, which was in 1917, 1918, and which was quite disastrous for Persia, and the fact that Dmitri himself was witnessing bread riots and big scenes at, in the vicinity of any sort of baker's shop. Okay, now before we start, I will say that this particular diary entry has some English, not a lot, but some of the English, it's just a matter of misspellings, so I don't need to mention those to you. But there are whenever there's a little bit of English that makes it sound like I'm a really bad translator, I feel like I need to say I didn't translate this. This is Dimitri's English. So I'll let you know what that is. And as for the theme today, this is, gosh, the angle I just have completely out of whack here. But this is a personal topic. So the analysis, the commentary on my part is all related to, who Dmitri was as a human being rather than what we've had recently with current events. Okay, here we go. As for my personal affairs, I am terribly unhappy with myself. To begin with, there's the fact that instead of having paid my debt to Staroselsky, I, thinking I would recoup my losses, again tried my luck and lost almost as much as before, and I still haven't gotten the money. But thanks to Yevrenov, he has arranged a much better deal for me without changing currency and, most importantly, without interest, which is extremely nice. He got 2,002 months from me from some old prince. I provided receipts, but I haven't gotten the money yet! Exclamation point. Then my relations with Lady Marling have undergone a change for 2 reasons. First, I was never in love with her, and am now less so than ever before. Her faults are blatantly apparent, and then I have become self-conscious on that score. It seems clear to me that everybody sees and takes notice of our slightly intimate relations, and of course it's stupid because she's about 9 years older than me but behaves like a 25-year-old! Exclamation point. The second reason is, and here we have English, that I really can't go on like that. I feel that am awful brute towards Sir Charles, whom I like very much. End of the English. Living with them for almost 6 months to so brazenly abuse his hospitality has become impossible for me. Naturally, Lady Marling, Lucia, perceives the change in my attitude toward her acutely and probably thinks that I have stopped loving her or some such romantic nonsense. The atmosphere has become strained, especially when we are à deux. Then we are silent almost the whole time and only discuss official things. But we have not yet had a serious conversation on that theme. That pleasure is yet to come. So I find myself staying away from home as much and as often as I can. And now here's a short description of what happened while I wasn't writing. And I'll stop there. So in the next video, we'll be doing probably 3, maybe even 4 of the short diary entries, because these ones are really short, but we'll talk about that later. Okay, so this is the first time that Dmitri, ironically, because he's talking about them, drawing apart from each other, or him drawing apart from her, but this is the first time that he has referred to her by her Christian name. In parentheses, but Lady Marling, and then in parentheses, Lucia. And as time goes by in the diaries, he'll be using pretty much exclusively her first name. Okay, so as is typical with Dmitri, when there's trouble, he does blame himself. He's tied into the morality of the thing, and he's sort of on what I would call a guilt-shame axis. So it's not that he isn't blaming other people for some things, like he's talking about, the things that aggravate him about Lady Marling, but that's always kind of been his saving grace, even though he'll sort of be nasty in the way he criticizes people. He takes the real guilt on himself, and I think that's a good quality. A person can go too far with it, but I think that goes directly back to the years that he and Maria spent as wards of Grand Duke Sergei, because he also talks about that in his 1906 diary when he was 14, about the whole issue of shame and how Sergei would make them feel ashamed. All right, so here we have, you may think, well, what's the point of all this? But if you want to understand Dmitri, this is so much Dmitri. This is a pattern that will just never change in his life. That he's not in love with a woman. He says that about Coco, even though their relationship is going reasonably well. I'm not in love with her. He always points that out quickly. Whether he's protesting too much, I don't know, but I think it was largely true. The impression I get is that it was largely true. She's in love with me, I'm not in love with her. In the case of Coco, he didn't say she was in love with him, but in many other instances, he made that clear. With Karali, with other women, she's in love with me, I'm not in love with her. And then it makes me laugh every time I read this slightly intimate. Well, what the heck does that mean? In a prior 1917 diary entry, he has said that we kiss, but that's all we do. And he says it in the present tense, like, well, we kissed a couple times. But no, they're doing some necking, they're doing some making out. But I believe him when he says that it's not going further than that. So I like his characterization of it as slightly intimate. And then, he sees all her faults. Her faults are blatantly apparent, and one of the worst is that she's 9 years older than him. I believe he was 26. Yes, he was 26. He turned 26 in September of that year. And she's 9 years older than him. So she's 35, which is not, is not ancient. But she's behaving like a 25-year-old, and that clearly embarrasses him. And what does it mean? We have to let our imaginations, is she kind of mooning on him, and is it kind of obvious? I don't know. But Dmitri had a thing about age, and anybody who was much older than him was an old person. So Lucia, as he's presenting her, is definitely an old person who should be acting her age. But, it wasn't extraordinary for him. He liked older women. That was completely in his wheelhouse. Okay, and the sense that people are watching, yeah, I don't know how many people were watching, but I suppose it was a small European community, and I suppose people were watching. I suppose there was a lot of gossip. I like his characterization of romantic nonsense, and again, I don't think that was false. I don't think he was super romantic, and so he doesn't like apparently, according to him, Lucia is sort of, acting like it's something from a romance novel. So here we come to more parts of this pattern. On the one hand, the declaration that he doesn't love the woman. On the other hand, avoidance. He strikes me not just in relation to women, but in relation to a lot of things in general, as a person who found it very difficult to say no. Saying no to people was never pleasant for him, and he did not like confrontation. And so his strategy was going to be avoidance as much as possible, which is exactly what he's describing in this diary entry. Avoidance, that he knows that they're reaching a breaking point, so that pleasure is yet to come. He's not going to be the one who initiates it. He's kind of waiting for it to fall on his head. Okay, so the other thing is that he does not, even if he's ashamed of what's happening, and he certainly is ashamed of what he's doing as a person who's been living in a household solely by the grace and favor of the host and his wife for 6 months, to be brazenly violating that hospitality, as he puts it, because he's carrying on with Sir Charles's wife and making Sir Charles look silly, to say the least. But he's not going to stop. He has stopped to a certain extent. He's stopped because, okay, so in this instance, he has sort of drawn a line in the sand and said, no, I'm not going to sort of, continue on with this, what does he call it, slight intimacy. But he's not leaving, and he's not stopping spending time with her. He still can be seen out in public when they have their daily rides and that sort of thing with her. So he'll stop to a certain extent, but, it's like with the gambling, which he refers to it. Yeah, he'd had another gambling disaster. And so he's not, even after sort of integrating the shame, he's not necessarily gonna cut off the source of that shame. So yeah, that's the pattern to look at. This, avoidance of confrontation, and I see that, well, and taking responsibility but not necessarily acting on it, and feeling like he gets pushed into a corner by women who want a romantic or loving relationship but whom he does not love. Okay, so every time I look at the screen, I'm bothered by this angle. Sorry about that. What do we have next time? Well, Dmitri he's discovered a new word, which is phenomenally, and he's going to be using it over and over again. It's the same, well, slightly different, but based on the same word, phenomenal in Russian. So he uses it in Russian, and, brace yourself to be hearing it over and over and over again. And then in the short diary entries, we'll have a lot of sports. We'll have, we'll have the diary entry about what happened, where he had this other gambling disaster. And then we'll have some interesting local color, for instance, a state funeral that he's fascinated by and that he'll be describing in some detail. So not all of that is going to be tomorrow, but we'll be going through 27th October, from the 20th through the 27th October, with short entries, some of them really short, some of them a little longer. And then we'll be going back to one of his longer diary entries with the news about current events. All right, I hope to see you then. Bye.